benefits, and strategic planning. Karen is a senior certified professional through the Society of HR Management. With Alternative HRD, she works with a wide range of clients, including businesses, nonprofits, and public entities. She is also involved in Alternative HRD's leadership team. Thanks so much, Karen, for being here with us today. I know you're presenting on a very important topic that our members are really interested in hearing more about. So with that, go ahead and begin.
You bet. I'm going to mute you all, and then I'm going to unmute you, Margaret. But so if you guys have stuff, you will be able to unmute yourself, but that way it will cut down. And I am recording, so hopefully this all works the way it should. I did a webinar yesterday and forgot to, at the last minute, move my power strip to my computer, but I do have power strip today, so we should be good to go. There's been a lot of good things that have happened as a result of a lot of bad things that have happened as a result of COVID-19, but some of the good things are just this, that we've kind of gotten used to doing Zoom. But at the same time, apologies up front if there's any technical issues that are going on. So again, my name is Karen DeLang. I work for Alternative HRD, and I know you guys, a lot of you are familiar with us. We work with organizations of all sizes, but our particular focus is organizations that probably have 100 or less employees and maybe don't have an HR department, and we basically become that department for them or become the HR manager. And we've been working with groups from the AGC for a long time, so you guys are a really good partner, and I appreciate that. I'm going to just go through my slides. Up front, I'm just going to say, just a disclaimer, we are not an attorney. This is not legal advice. This is general information based on the research and experience that we have in the study. We've been doing the same thing, attending webinars, researching all the documents, listening to the press releases. And we just have the privilege of working with a lot of different companies. So we have just some scenarios that have come up that we wanted to be able to share with you today. So just a disclaimer on that. What I'm going to do is walk through, some of this is very much review, because even though we are learning this law on the fly along with everybody else, even the people that created it, it's now been around for a couple of weeks, so we have a little bit of experience with it. So first I'm going to give you just a review and an overview of what the FFCRA is, and then I'm going to go into some specific scenarios and questions that people have asked. And then as we go, if you guys have questions, and you can ask me what other people have done or what we've learned, I'm welcome to do a dialogue at the end. So first of all, just an overview. FFCRA was signed into law on March 18th, 2020. That just seems like ages ago at this point. It went into effect on April 1st. It's got a sunset of December 31st, 2020. So this is a limited time requirement or availability of resources that we have. And the law did a couple of things. It provided sick leave for employees up to 80 hours. It established some changes to the FMLA Act. It allowed for some tax credits for employers to get repaid for the amount of time that they give to employees on leave. And then it provided some additional funding for the state unemployment insurance trust funds. So I'm going to talk first about the EPSLA, and then I'll talk about the changes to the FMLA. So again, a lot of this is review, but EPLSA, the covered employers are everybody with 500 or fewer employees. There are some government agencies that are not covered, but for the most part, it's everybody under 500 employees. All employees are eligible, doesn't matter how long they've been employed. From day one, they are eligible for the EPLSA. There are 6 reasons that they can take this paid leave, and we'll talk about those in a minute. They can get paid up to 80 hours. The rate of pay kind of depends on what the reason is. They can use other paid leave, but an employer can't require them to use other paid leave. If they choose to use EPLSA and it's for one of those reasons, the employer needs to give it to them. And it does expire on 12/31. So the 6 reasons, again, this is an overview. The first 3 have to do with the person themselves. So they are subject to quarantine. They are told to self-quarantine by the healthcare provider. They are having symptoms and getting diagnosis. Reasons 4, 5, and 6 are for other things. Number 4 is taking care of someone else who is on a quarantine. Number 5 is taking care of their kids. And number 6 is kind of the catch-all. They put it in place just in case something changes over the next few months. They don't have to go back and revamp the whole law. It's not being used right now. The reasons for the amount of time that they can use and the amount of pay. They can use up to 80 hours if they're full-time, and that's a max of 80 hours. They don't get to use it more than once. If they use it for reasons 1 through 3 or for taking care of themselves, they get paid 100% up to a maximum of 511. And if it's for reasons 4, 5, or 6, which is taking care of someone else or the school thing, or reason 6, then they get paid 2/3. So again, I don't think any of this is new information for you. So just a quick overview on the FMLA part. FMLA obviously has been around for a long time. So this expanded on the FMLA that was already there. And so what it did is it changed, first of all, FMLA for the covered employees used to be, or is, 50 or more, except for this particular period of time for this particular reason. Then the people who are covered, the employers that are covered, or anyone who has 500 employees or less. They both have some exclusion to them that if you're a healthcare provider, then you are not eligible to take advantage of that, or an emergency responder. And I have had that before where maybe a nursing home or an ambulance driver or something, they're excluded. So there are certain ones that are excluded. The Department of Labor put in a very small window that says if you can avoid paying this sort of thing, if paying it or allowing your employees to be off for this period of time would jeopardize the viability of your business. Very small window. I don't really think there's going to be many employers that will be able to take advantage of that, but it could be. As far as the eligible employers under the EPLSA, of course, that was from every employer from day 1. For this expanded Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, they need to be employed for at least 30 days. So today is May 6th. They would need to have been employed since April 7th in order to be able to apply for this. So that's kind of a rolling look at the last 30 days. There's only one reason that somebody can take paid leave under FMLA, this expansion. Only one. And that was one of the confusions that were in the beginning, that and we thought that you could take it for lots of reasons. And no, the only reason you can get paid under this new expansion is if you're taking care of your kids. For the most part, it's under the age of 18 because their regular provider is no longer available. So this is part of FMLA. FMLA gives employees 12 weeks. This expands FMLA by providing a new reason for it and provides pay under it, but it doesn't expand the amount of FMLA time they get. So they get to take up to 12 weeks of leave for this Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, and the first 10 days under this are considered unpaid time. And we're going to talk in a minute about how they intersect with each other. They can, since the FMLA part has 10 days of unpaid time up front, they can use vacation, personal leave, PTO, sick leave, whatever you normally have that you could, or be unpaid during that first 10 days, whatever kind of your policies are in place, if they elect not to use EPLSA during that time. So they could take that and use other leave during that time. It's up to the employee whether or not they want to do that. You can't force them. You need to pay them out at 2/3 pay is basically what this says. By the way, some of these slides have a lot of information. I do plan to share all these slides after the fact. So I know I'm kind of breezing through this part. If this is new, I apologize, but I assume most of this is not new information. So that's kind of why I'm just doing this overview very quickly. Under the FMLA, there's no retaliation and you can't give away their jobs. Under both of them, you can't, their job is guaranteed. So if somebody is off, and I've had this already, where if it's a small employer, they have more than 25 employees, but they have somebody who is going to take an intermittent leave throughout the summer, and she will be off for most of the summer taking care of her kids. And it's going to put a hardship on them, but at the same time, they can't let her go. They need to keep her. This is a right that she has to be able to use this leave. So yeah, it can cause some issues, but they do have job protection under this. And again, there's a notice that you do need to have out. Again, I assume most of you have done this already, but if you haven't, I do have the hyperlink in here. There's a poster that needs to be posted along with all of your other employment law posters. If you have new hires, you need to make sure that they are able to have access to that poster. If it's posted in a prominent place, that's fine. If you have people working remotely or whatever, and they're not around for those posters, you can email it to them or send it to them in the mail as a requirement for the posting. But don't forget about your new hires with the poster. Okay, I'm going to go into now a bunch of Q&As that have just been developed. Either the answers have been developed by the Department of Labor, or it's ones that we have done some research and found the answers for. So again, there's a lot of information on some of these slides. The ones that have the most information are the ones that have probably copy paste from the Department of Labor. This is one of those laws, again, that we're all learning how to, I think somebody had said today, learning how to fly the airplane while we're in the air. And so when this law first came out, the Department of Labor also didn't know how they were gonna to put this into place. And so, you know, as well as anybody else, is that the Department of Labor Q&A was every couple of days you'd get 15 more answers and 15 more answers until I think they're pretty settled now on the answers, but it is really still good to check on them as additional things they respond to different additional questions. So the first one is how the two laws interact. So we have EPLSA and the Expanded Family Medical Leave Act. And they, the EPLSA, remember, is the first 10 days or 2-week period. The two laws run concurrently. So if someone is using the first 2 weeks to take care of their children who are not in school, you start both of them at the same time if the employee chooses. So they will get their first 2 weeks under the EPLSA, there'll be no gap in time, and then they continue on with the Expanded Family Medical Leave Act. But it's two buckets of money that the funds come out of. They're going to use all of their 80 hours under the EPLSA, and then they start tapping into the Family Medical Leave Act bucket. So again, you want to kind of track them at the same time. Oh, and on my screen, I have the answer showing. On your screen, I see that I missed all the words, so sorry about that. But again, I will send you all the slides. There's a lot of words on this one, but basically they can run concurrently. So are there any reasons why an employee would not want to use the emergency paid sick leave? And actually there are. So you do need to give employees the option of, do they want to take the EPLSA now or not? They can only use it they only get 80 hours if they're full-time, period. And if they use it for reasons 4 through 6, it only pays them at 2/3. If they use it for reasons 1 through 3, they're paid at 100%. So you could have an employee who, reason number 4 is to take care of someone else, for instance. So they're taking care of someone in their house who is sick. So they're getting paid at the 2/3 rate. Then they use it up, they're done. But they may instead want to save that for a time when they think they're going to be sick. So first they're taking care of somebody else, but they're pretty sure they're going to be sick right after that. So they maybe want to save their EPLSA to use for themselves at 100%. They're going to get paid a little bit more. So they only get to use it once. It's a one and done. Once those 80 hours are up, that's all they get. I don't know if I have this one on my next question, so I'm going to go back to this one. There is something that's buried in the regulations. I haven't seen a lot about this yet. I expect to see this, and it will come up a little bit more later, but there's a place in there that says that 80 hours is by employee, not by employer-employee. So you have John Smith in your organization, and he works until June, and he uses 15 hours of that 80 hours. Now he goes to work for somebody else. He doesn't get a new 80 hours. I don't know how they think we're going to track that. I don't know, but it clearly says 80 hours for an employee. Doesn't matter how many employers they work for. So unless they change that, that's really what it says right now. So don't know about that, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I kind of think that may come up as things go forward. Since we get tax credits back, you know, you want to make sure that you're maybe asking that question as you hire forward. Okay, can an employer deny paid sick leave if leave was given prior to the EPLSA going into effect? And that question came up, and again, I think that this is probably no longer an issue. It's since the law went into effect on April 1st, but there was a lot of people, if you remember back in March, that were scared or had issues or whatever, and employers were very generous and said, we're going to pay people to be off. And then when April 1st came, they said, okay, well, now you've used it. Well, no, the law went into effect April 1st. Anything you did prior to that, you don't get tax credits for it. It doesn't count towards the EPLSA. It's just out of the goodness of your heart and your generosity, and good for you. Can you use it multiple times? So it depends. You only get a total of 80 hours for whatever combination of reasons that you want to use it. It depends, because it depends on what the situation is. If you're taking EPLSA to take care of yourself, you can't do it intermittently very well. You're off for a block of time. So if you are on quarantine because you're sick, you can't work 2 hours in the office today. You're just off. So you can use it if you haven't used the full 80-hour bucket, and you can use it intermittently, for instance, if you're using it to take care of your kids. So yes-ish. So that's why it says, can it be used intermittently? It depends. And the Department of Labor has really said they encourage employers and employees to collaborate. They really are trying to make this as flexible as possible, so that, again, if people are home taking care of their kids, they can go in and work for a few hours, or they can work from home and telework for a few hours, but then they need to help their kids with school for a few hours, and so they're going to be kind of on the clock, off the clock, on the clock, off the clock, and they really want you to collaborate on that. You do have to agree to it together on what's going to work, but they are not, the exempt, non-exempt status of an employee is not going to be affected if you let them work intermittently on and off again. Oops, that was the wrong direction. Where am I at here? So again, as far as the intermittently, I touched on this a minute ago, but you can't take it in intermittently if you are on isolation order, or if you are having symptoms and you have a positive diagnosis for that. You can't take it intermittently. Okay, so this question has come up quite a bit. We have an employee who is afraid to come to work. She's not experiencing symptoms, and she doesn't think she's been exposed, but she would prefer to stay home. Would she be eligible for the emergency paid sick leave? So the answer to that is no. In order to be eligible for it, you have to be directed by a healthcare provider, someone that is advising you to stay home and quarantine or self-isolate. Or if there's some sort of order, government order for them to stay home. You don't get to just do it because you're afraid. Now, I really want to just remind people, this whole thing is, just kind of exploded on our landscape in the middle of March, and people have been very anxious over it, and everyone is a little bit different in how they handle those anxieties. Some people are, because we've been telling them, if you're sick, stay home. If you don't feel well, stay home. They hear it from the mayor, they hear it from the governor, they hear it from the president, they hear it everywhere. And so I just want to encourage you to just be empathetic on that and work around it as much as possible. Now, you may instead let them use their sick time and maybe don't count it on their absences. I know 2 occasions where an employer said, if you're sick, stay home. The employee felt sick, they stayed home, and then they got let go for being sick and trying to be following the right orders. So kind of just be empathetic on what's going on. You have no idea what sick people's situations are, whether at home or how they deal with anxiety or any of those things. Lots of stuff is going on in our world today. So this question is slightly different on the same thing. We have an employee who is afraid to come into work. She is experiencing symptoms, but she doesn't think she's been exposed. Should we enforce our attendance policy? And that's where I say, you want to actively encourage employees to stay home if they're sick. If you enforce the attendance policies, that kind of sends a mixed message. So if at all possible, it's better to err on the side of compassion rather than strict rule following. It's not going to change your ability to let somebody go for attendance. It's not going to change any of the at-will things. It just gives you a little bit more empathy at this time. So, what kind of paperwork or forms do I need to have to consider leave? I should probably check to see if there's any questions before I go on here. I don't know if I can. You know what, Dan, I'm going to make you as a co-host as well, because I see you're on and you can check the chat and you can unmute yourself if you need to. So what kind of paperwork or forms do I need to consider a leave request? So regardless of what it is, you're going to want to keep good paperwork as we go along for this. So they have said some things that you are going to need to have. If you don't have forms already, you're going to want to create forms. We've got forms that you can, that we've created. There's lots of forms that are out there, but make sure you have some sort of documentation. So if they want to use the EPLSA or the expanded FMLA, you want the name of the person, when they want to be gone, the reasons, a statement from the employee that says they want to use it, and then the dates that they're going to be using it or the times and how much they're going to do it. If they need to stay home because they're under a government order, or maybe they're home because a healthcare provider tells them they need to be home, make sure you have the name of that person as well. So some of that going on as well. If they're asking for time off because of their kids' school, then you need to have the name of the facility. If it's not a facility, if it's grandma or grandpa, someone that's going to be taking care of them that says they're unavailable, and that there's no other suitable person able to take care of them. And I do see there's a chat. Do I need to do this one? Nope, Dan's doing it. All right, very good. Okay. I'm going to keep on going here. So this is going to be a thing that comes up right now because school is letting out and we're going to be moving from school care to summer care. So do you need to have a new form from a parent if it's a school-age child that now needs care during the summer? And the answer is yes, you do. I'm going to move on my window so I can see what's going on here. Sorry about that. So yes, you'll need to have a new form, and you can use the same form that they have before, but you want to just update it to say why it is, because one of the things that they're going to be using it for, taking care of their kids, you have to have the name of the facility. And if they're off because their school is off and that's what you have on file, and you don't get a new one for their now summer care is not available, you're not going to have the right documentation to back it up. So make sure you get new documentation now. You don't have to have a break in time. They just kind of flow from one you know, leave to the next. It's just a new form in the middle because it's kind of a new reason. So should we require medical certification when someone needs to stay home? Yeah, in order for them to get paid, you have to have the name of the provider who ordered them to be paid. So again, just because they're scared, you don't want to let them stay home. However, you don't need to have medical certification. So for EPLSA, they actually are encouraging people not to have, you know, to go into their doctor necessarily. They might be doing a telecall, or they might be doing, you know, something. They probably had something from their doctor. If they are doing a telehealth thing, they can maybe give you something that says they should go stay home. If they've been ordered by the South Dakota Department of Health because they've gotten a positive, they're going to be getting a notice from that. So just kind of let you know that. And I'm going to jump over the question that's on there. It says, if someone is quarantined for exposure, are they able to work intermittent if they're working from home? Yeah, if they're working from home, yes, they can. That's the teleworking. They just can't go in and out of the office. So in that case, yes, they could. Let's see. And I missed that because I was on my wrong screen. Okay, so what information do I need to keep and track in order to get tax credits for the paid time off? So again, you'll want to keep as much as possible. Now, one of the things that you'll want to do is make sure that your payroll system is accurately tracking what you are paying for this. So I have it in the next, perhaps in the next slide. Some of the payroll systems, I had this question the other day. She said, okay, so the person is normally 40 hours and they're going to get paid 2/3 pay. So she did the calculation, and so then she was going to put in that many of the 2/3 hours. I'll just do 30. Let's just say 30 so I can do my math. 30 hours. And since they only get paid 2/3, she was going to put in 20 hours into her payroll system, pay her at her regular rate of pay for 20 hours, and figured that would cover the full 30-hour period. I don't know if you're following on that. That's not quite right, because when she goes back later, she's just going to see 20 hours used. She actually wants to reflect in payroll that this person used the full 30 hours, but was only paid at 2/3 of her regular rate. So one thing you might want to do in your payroll system is to add in a couple of new pay codes. And the ones that I've seen suggested were 3 new codes. So I'll have them listed in a future slide, but it's EPSLA 2/3, EPSLA 100%. So that way it covers if they're being paid 2/3 rate or 100%. And then the FMLA 2/3. And so that when you track it, you're putting in all of the pay. So you may be putting in 40 hours, but your payroll system is going to go, oh, but this is at a different pay rate. It's at the 2/3 pay rate. And so you're tracking the full hours, but you're only paying out at a lower rate. If I lost you on that, so sorry, ask me a question, I'll try to explain it better. But the end of the day, you're going to want to have all of your information so that you can prove to the IRS what you have paid out. Okay. And again, this question isn't quite timely enough, so I missed some of that. So we are an essential employer in Minnehaha County, and Lincoln County, same thing. We have an over 65 employee who wants to continue to work. Should we let him? So as you know, right now, there's an order, executive order that doesn't expire until May 11th that says for employees or for people that are particularly vulnerable, including those who are over age 60 and those suffering respiratory, they should stay home at all possible. That one isn't the one, the shall. It's the one from Minnehaha and Lincoln County that says over age 65, vulnerable individuals shall stay home if possible. But there's a caveat in there, and that's why the answer to this is it depends. So except for vulnerable individuals to work in critical infrastructure job or to conduct essential errands. So if you are in a critical infrastructure job and you have people over 65 that are working for you, that's considered a critical reason to stay at work. And so then you should let him work, him or her work. Just because they're over that age doesn't mean they don't get to work. I'm going to do a mute all for a minute because I got somebody that's giving me some feedback. Actually, see probably who it is. Okay. And a reminder again, the reason this is not so timely, this is going to expire on, is that Monday? I believe Monday. So if a person has already used 12 weeks of FMLA during the past year, are they eligible for 12 more weeks of paid time off? And just as a reminder, again, FMLA, so for the most part, you know, FMLA, this was an expansion of FMLA. Previously, all FMLA was unpaid and it covered only, was eligible, it was only available to employees who worked for an employer that had 50 or more employees. So with this expansion, it brings it all the way down to employers with just one employee. So everybody is now covered. But if you were offering FMLA and you were a covered employer previously, someone has already used some 12 weeks, some of their 12 weeks, this law did not give them more time. They still only get 12 weeks total. Remember that first two weeks are unpaid, but they get 12 weeks total. So however you do your tracking, because you may have people that have used some, or you may have people that are going to use some later. And remember, anything they use for this counts towards their full FMLA allotment. So we have some people working remotely a few hours a day while also having school-age kids at home. How do we track their time? And that's where I talked a little bit before about the intermittent leave. So first of all, again, the department really encourages you to work together to come up with an agreement of a way that it can work. So you both want to agree on it. They don't get to say how they're going to do it. You both need to agree. But if you agree, they did say this specific example. They can work in increments. They can telework for a while and then use some leave time and then return teleworking. And so you should just try to be as flexible as possible on that. Again, that's why you're going to be really careful on your tracking, how you're doing it. So if they were using the FMLA EA at 2/3 for a couple of hours and then their regular pay for a couple of hours and then an FMLA EA for a couple of hours, it's going to get really confusing. So you really might want to consider using some different codes. We also developed some tracking systems that you can use to track your time so that you know kind of where people are at and keep them up to date on where they're at as well. We got word that one of our employees tested positive. What's my responsibility now? Now I do have a full webinar that talks just about this and kind of how do you respond to a positive test. So this is going to be a one slide, what would normally be another 40 minutes, which we're not going to do. So in a nutshell, because there are some things you are legally liable for making sure that your employee is not, that you take the right actions, including keeping your workforce safe and not discriminating against this employee. There's some, the employment laws did not go away because of this. We still have to follow ADA and the Rehabilitation Act and the Title VII and all those things we still have to follow. So what do? Very quickly, send the employee home, get them out of the workplace. Wherever they were working, close off that work area. If they're, like I said, it's construction and they're out and they had a vehicle that they were in, you know, no one uses it. Close it off, make sure no one is in and out of there. If it's an office, close off the office to everyone else. Maybe open the windows so you get some airflow through there. And then if at all possible, leave it alone for 24 hours before you clean it. Next thing you want to do is to identify who has had close contact with that individual within 2 days prior to symptoms appearing. Now in Mitchell, a couple of days ago, they came out with somebody out there that worked at a bar and casino, came back positive, and they said, this person worked on Friday or Saturday, and so you may have been exposed. That's because it's, you know, the 2 days prior, they have to go back, I would assume. So they need to, there is that window, it's from when they started or when they found out they were sick and then prior to that. So anyone who was at close contact within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, they should also be sent home. You want to have a communication that goes out to the rest of the employees to let them know what you're doing, and by still maintaining the confidentiality if possible. but be reassuring for, you know, you're taking the right actions, you're keeping them safe, that kind of thing. This question, or a variation of this question, comes up a lot. So we have an employee who let us know that their spouse might have been exposed to the coronavirus and the spouse is staying home for 14 days. Should the employee stay home? So this one, again, we go back to what the CDC recommends on this one. In this particular situation, your employee has not been exposed. The spouse is possibly exposed. It depends. And that's a might have been exposed. And so for your employee, they recommend social distancing and not necessarily self-quarantine. Now, a medical person may tell them otherwise, in which case it is. But the one that I really like is the infographic that came from the Department of Labor. And there's a hyperlink on here so you can go and pull the entire slide, because this is not the entire poster. But honestly, I love this poster because it just helps calm people down a little bit to say, okay, let me logically think about this. Because when we hear positive, you know, someone that we know that maybe we walked by in the street or whatever has positive, or maybe I shopped at this place, or I went in this store, or my delivery driver dropped something off at this business or whatever, and you kind of go, oh, what do we do? Or suddenly going to, you know, our whole business is going to be wiped out. Just take a step back and just walk through this. So in this particular case, what should I do if I've been in close contact with someone who might have been exposed? So your employee's spouse might have been exposed. They're not experiencing any symptoms yet, and so the answer is self-monitor and practice social distancing. So it's when over here, if the spouse then tests positive, yeah, that's when you're going to go to the self-quarantine and self-monitor. Again, at the advisement of a healthcare provider. So that one I really recommend pulling that up, having it around in your workplace, you know, put it on places where people kind of feel comfortable with it so they know what action they should be taking. Where do I start? I assume a lot of this you've already started, but just some things that you may want to have in place, kind of what your next steps are, is make sure your notice is posted where it is. Make sure you're over communicating, help with any rumors, or let people know that you're on top of this. Be proactive by ensuring workplace safety. So that's hand sanitizers, signs. My husband's place, they're using face masks all the time. I'm sure a lot of you are doing that, and the owners are modeling the same thing. So make sure you're following the current OSHA guidelines or CDC guidelines. Look for remote work options where possible. I know there are some companies that are still just going, you want to start thinking ahead about some remote work options. You want to be thinking about what you're going to do if somebody gets sick, especially what if it's your payroll person. What are you going to do? Make sure you have some backup. Make sure that you understand and you've got the tracking in place for the FFCRA and that people understand how to use it. And then where we're at now is, as we're starting to open up our workplaces a little bit more, maybe a return to work plan and how that's going to look for you. So that is my presentation. I did put some resources at the end that you'll be able to, they're also all hyperlinks, so you'll be able to check on those. The benefit of working with Alternative HRD is, we can support you for a lot of things. And I know, especially for a lot of you, you're kind of a standalone HR department. We're here to support you. I tell you what, I work with the best team ever, and all the time, there's no way for one person to know everything. We check with each other, find out information along the way. New situations come up, we find out how other people have handled it and what was the correct advice. So just know, when you work with us, you get the whole team. You might have one person on the phone, but you get all of us. It's a lot of women and Dan is where we're at with that. We offer our services a couple of different ways. We do a managed service where we become your HR department, and we do basically everything. We've started something new that's called an HR subscription where you can, for $99 a month, you get individual consultation as well as some special deals that we run. So I'm going to open it up for questions and just see if you have anything. I'm going to, again, you can unmute yourself, but if you guys would put your cameras on, that would be swell. So thank you all very much. Margaret, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. First of all, Karen, really appreciate your time and expertise for the group. Like Karen said, if you guys could show your cameras if possible and unmute yourself so that you guys can ask questions, now's the time to be doing that. But it does really help to be able to see people's faces and just feel a little more normal. I know nothing's normal right now, but I think the closer we can get to that, and again, as your colleagues take this time to share information, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about what Karen has presented on either. I would appreciate if you do have questions for Karen that we address those first, and then if anybody has other questions, we can talk about it this time. So feel free, guys. There are no questions?
I do have a question. This is Cheryl. That you had talked about some forms that you were using. Would that be possible to share those forms with us, or are they a confidential form that you have for your company?
It should be okay. A lot of the forms are things that we've gotten from other places. I'll share what I can. I'm not going to share the whole thing. Part of our subscription that we offer is we have a tool chest, and with that we have compiled a lot of resources into it and tried to organize it in a way that makes it useful for you. So one of the things, again, that we're offering is that $99 service. So some of those things that, yeah, I'll send something out or at least provide a resource for it. So that's a good question.
Perfect. Thank you much.
Has anybody subscribed to Alternative HRD? I guess I'll ask that quick question since Karen put that as an option. I don't know if anybody's tried it or has seen value in it.
No, we just started it at the beginning of this. We've talked about it for a long time. And again, there's a lot of negatives in the things that we've changed the way we've done, are all of us for the work. But this is one of the positives that we had, again, had talked about doing webinars, and we've talked about doing subscription things for people who are not here or maybe don't need an HR retained manager. So this is one of the things. So we started about a month ago. We do have some subscribers, but I don't think there's anybody from AGC.
If there aren't any more questions, you guys, I would like one more chance for people to get their questions in. If you don't, that is absolutely fine too. Again, if you guys have questions for me, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I know that Karen has given me her information to share with you all. I will follow up with that after this meeting. Karen's going to be sending me the information as far as the recording and her presentation, but I will share her information at that point so that if you guys have additional questions for Karen, or if you want to ask about the options you guys have with Alternative HRD, you know, you can address that with Karen directly. Again, appreciate your time today, Karen. Appreciate your expertise. It's a tough time for everybody, so appreciate additional information on this subject matter. At that time, I guess the meeting is over, unless, again, if anybody has any questions at this time.
All right.
Thank you, Karen and Margaret.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Stay safe.
Too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.